Be warned, this video contains spoilers. This is a narrative-heavy game, and I suggest you experience it for yourself beforehand. Lake is set in 1986. We are introduced to our player character Meredith Weiss as she meets a big deadline for the software company she works at before going back to her hometown of Providence Oaks for 2 weeks to cover the mail carrier job for her father while her parents are on vacation. That's our setup. From here on out, you wake up in the early mornings to start your mail delivery route and take in the atmosphere of this small town and mingle with the locals. You deliver mail every day of the week, except for Sundays, of course, because as we all know,
no post on Sunday.
You start off meeting people from Meredith's past and people that are even new to her. Sometimes you'll simply be delivering the mail and perhaps having some small talk if someone is around to accept it. But you also have relationships that delve a bit deeper. These relationships can trigger post-work events. Some take place right after the shift ends, and some take place later in the evening after your daily phone call, typically with your parents or job in the city. I have to give this game massive props for its layout of events because I never found my plans with one NPC overlapping with that of another, and forcing me to let one of them down. In a lot of games, that type of dynamic works and ensures that you focus on the relationships or goals that are most important to you. But this game has a focus on relaxing and unwinding, and it's not meant to be challenging or difficult, so I have to say thank you for planning this out and not giving me an anxiety attack at the idea of an NPC hating me for bailing on our movie date. Speaking of movie dates, we have to talk about the romances. In this game you have two relationships you can pursue. One with the VHS rental store owner Angie, and the other with local lumberjack Robert. I'm so glad that we could pursue Angie, because she's awesome. At least at first.
You don't know me, Meredith, okay?
I mean, you go out to see a David Lynch film and make out afterwards. If that doesn't make her best girl, I don't know what will. Learn Lynch, learn cinema. Robert, on the other hand, is someone you help to stop an apartment complex from being built and destroying the nature of the area by rallying the locals. There's obvious chemistry here as well, but he holds off until the end of the game to confess and try to get with you. And she jumps at you pretty much from the start. My main problem with these romances is how little time we spend with them. You see Robert every couple of days, and after the store closes down, Angie disappears completely until the end. Outside of the romances, I think my favorite relationships would be with Maureen, Kay, and Lori. I think they have the most time put into them, and all fulfill a different role. Maureen is a fun aunt type of character. She watched you grow up and always has you leave the conversation smiling. Kay's the old best friend who you have a real chance to reforge your bond with and has a fun, adventurous personality that really shines through. Lori is the youngest character we meet, and we serve as a bit of a mentor and a friend to her, giving her life advice as well as just being a good friend. I think the open mic is an excellent way to pull the cast together and give us our closing moments. I think it's fun that we really don't have anything to do with it. It's honestly Kay's big night. And that's great. The world doesn't have to revolve around the character you play as, and I think it makes a lot more sense that it doesn't on this night. This moves us on to the endings though. The big decision this game plays with for its entirety is the idea of whether you'll take up the mail job for good or you'll move back to the city. You can make either of these decisions solo, of course, but things get spiced up when romance is involved. If you stay in Providence Oaks, you can formally start your relationship with Robert if you took that path. If you want to go with Angie though, you really have to go with Angie. She wants to travel in an RV and see the States as a free spirit, and I'll be honest, this kinda confused me. It works, sure, as Angie talks a lot about getting out of Providence Oaks. She originally came here for a change of pace and is now seeking another. You could totally do the free spirit angle with that, but to be honest, I thought it was setting up a choice, linking each partner to each path. From the start, Robert made sense for the character choosing to stay, but I thought they were building up Angie to want to go back to the city where movies would be more appreciated. In the end, you either roam around without a plan with Angie, or live a lonely life in the city with your fat stacks of money. I just find it odd that the choice for both isn't there at all, with free spirit travel as the alternative to moving to the big city together. I know the game makes small-town life idealistic, but kinda harsh to make it out that you can't have love and a big city, big money career. At least, that's the way I read it. And to be fair, I'm probably reading way too deep into this. Outside of the main features of the game, I have my bug report. I think giving indie games feedback is important because these are the developers you know are actually looking for it, and if anyone, they might be the ones to actually fix problems people find with their games. We'll start off with one that I actually think is really cool and fun. There's an area with cabins in the woods, most of them seemingly abandoned actually. Going beyond the cabin, let me walk for a brief moment before meeting this floating texture in the sky. That's when I knew I was in for a real treat. Walking in this unfinished landscape was actually incredibly pleasant. It's also the only time I've seen the character fall off of anything, so that was a pretty goofy treat as well. Of all the bugs I encountered in this game, this is the one I would suggest not fixing. In fact, expanding it to make this area more intentional would be a wonderful idea. Just wandering the woods and perhaps having a chance to come across some wildlife is an excellent experience, and in a walking simulator like this, it is a pleasant change of pace from just wandering the small town or the area surrounding the lake. On that note, you know when walking isn't fun? When it's nearly the entirety of the map that you're walking on, and it's an experience that's forced upon you by a glitch. At the start of one of my days, I got in the mail truck per usual, and was teleported into a cutscene at Roberts. At first I panicked, but then thought maybe it was a mandatory cutscene to progress the plot, and that I would be placed back at the start afterwards, but then reality set in, and I began my 15-minute walk back to the post office to begin my day proper. This one's not much of a technical bug, at least I don't think so, but something I wanted to bring up. The ending I originally got made my head spin. So in my playthrough, I romanced Angie. I also had a hang session with the hippies at the campground, and that ended in them giving me their RV. I might be misunderstanding that Meredith is playing dumb for Angie, but it seems that these two events were not ever meant to happen in the same playthrough. I gave the RV to Lori, and then Lori comes up during the open mic and looks at Angie specifically the whole time to tell her that she fixed up the RV. Angie then asks me if I know the hippie couple, and then explains to me that she somehow became the owner of the RV. The later scene acknowledges that Lori had it, and we named it together, but that she decided to give it up to Angie after fixing it. But the whole scene at the open mic just makes it seem like I was never supposed to be involved with the RV in the first place. This just left me baffled, and I'm still not sure if I'm crazy or not, and completely just misunderstanding obvious points here, but just something about this scene felt very off and unintentional. Let's talk about this arcade cabinet. This arcade cabinet had me so frustrated. Because it's difficult? No. That would be totally fine. What has me going is they make a big deal out of Lori's high score. And I beat it on the first try. So, what are my options? 2 dialogue choices admitting I suck and need to get good at the game. What? That kind of set me off, but I was like, no big deal, no big deal. Let's just give it another shot. Might have been a bug where there has to be a first conversation after the game. No big deal. Well, I beat my own high score 2 more times, and all I got was, "You're getting better, but you still need to practice," as some sort of pep talk. I wasted too much time on this minigame trying to get the victory state, only to get slapped consistently for doing a good job, and that was more irritating than I care to admit. I also had a reoccurring issue with trying to load my saves. I would select my save, a dialog box would pop up asking me if I was sure that was the save I wanted to load, and I couldn't interact with it. Yes and no would not highlight it, and it would make sounds as if I was initially selecting the file. Sometimes backing out and reselecting it would fix it, but I've had times where I've had to switch over to the mouse to get it to work. In the end, I think Lake for the most part succeeds in what it wants to be. A relaxing escape from the chaos of modern life into a pleasant small town with colorful characters to bond with and a peaceful area to explore. I found my time in Providence Oaks to be all that it was cracked up to be from the trailers that brought me in. The voice acting is quality and really helps sell the characters and interactions with some notable exceptions. Looking at you, Granny.
Oh!
I really enjoyed just taking in the sights as I made my deliveries, or just explored for the fun of it. That said, I think the flaws jump out to me more when I think back on this game. I think just driving around on one of my favorite days of the story could be a relaxing escape, but at the moment, I tend to remember these moments that sucked me out of the experience or felt like the game was punishing or mocking me by teleporting me across the world or giving me fail states for succeeded objectives. I would like to return to the lake when these things are ironed out, but I've got all the endings, and I don't see myself picking up this story in a complete way again. Most other reviews I read were just looking for more game, with players seeming to clock in 5 hours to beat this, and while I squeezed out 8 hours, that runtime does include all endings, the 15-minute walk back to the post office, some time AFK, and the time I spent exploring the out-of-bounds areas and just wandering in general. But if you're playing straight through it and satisfied with one ending, I could easily see how you'd have it closed out in 5 hours or less. There's no post-game to explore, not even a free mode to just wander around in a post-game state, or, more ambitiously, one with a randomly generated mail deliveries just to keep you busy. So I'm not sure what would bring you or me back outside of a love for the scenery, and I don't think that's enough to keep a game alive for most people. Despite the criticisms, I am happy to have purchased this and support the developer. I want games like this to exist, and for the people making them to have different insights to help fuel future games. Indie games explore and push elements of genres that have met a status quo that most seem fine with, and that will forever be interesting to me. So, this review goes out with love. If you played Lake, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And if you haven't, consider picking the game up for yourself. It's available for PC and Xbox family consoles. Also, consider subscribing for more videos on indie games like this. And as always, have a wonderful day.